Hello there. Welcome to the second episode of the 9.8 video series from Havenfall Comics and myself, Mr. Pickles. As warned during my first video about Giant Size X-Men #1, this video is going to focus on Multappears. Definition: a multappear is a single issue of a comic book with multiple important first appearances in it. This is a term that I've created. Feel free to use it out there in comic book land or not. So I've compiled an entire list of what I would consider important multappears that I will be going through. I'll be talking about pricing at the 7.0 CGC grade, just to keep an apples to apples comparison. Some of these books are going to be well out of reach for many of us, and some are very attainable, and I think there's going to be some value in them. This is not a completely exhaustive list. Please let me know politely in the comments if I've missed anything. But anyway, let's get through this in lightning round fashion and go fast. So the first multappear I want to talk about is Action Comics #1, the first appearance of Superman, Lois Lane, and Zalara. But once you get past Superman and Lois Lane, why would you even list off anybody else? This is You're Never Going to Find It or Afford It type of book from 1938. I estimate it's somewhere between a $2.3 million book. If it ever comes out of hiding and goes into auction, it usually breaks records, and we'd see it in the news. You have my permission to buy it if you can. Now we'll skip up to Action Comics #252. This is the multappear that has the first appearance of Supergirl, Metallo, and Zor-El, the father of Supergirl. This came out in 1959. A 7.0 is currently selling at $5,500 or right around there. This one's been going up and down, so buyers keep an eye on price trends and buy low. Sellers keep an eye on price trends and definitely try to sell a little bit higher. Now we'll skip over to Marvel Comics and we'll talk about Amazing Spider-Man #2. This is a very important multappear for Spider-Man. So this is the first appearance of Vulture. The Terrible Tinkerer and Mysterio actually has a cameo first appearance in this as well. This is from 1963. Currently selling around $7,000. Spider-Man titles, Amazing Spider-Man titles, are actually starting to see some weakness despite showing some resilience as we kind of come out of the pandemic and into the plummeting comic book prices. And now we're starting to see weakness here. So I would advise caution with all Spider-Man titles at this point. The next one, also an Amazing Spider-Man, is #31. Another very important multappear for Amazing Spider-Man. This sees the first appearance of Gwen Stacy, Harry Osborn, and Miles Warren, who eventually becomes the Jackal, from 1965. A 7.0 is currently selling somewhere around $950. Again, I'm seeing some weakness in these books. I'd advise this one is a cautious buy. I actually have a raw copy of this book on my storefronts. And so hopefully you can see this. And so if you can DM me if you want to make a direct deal, or you can visit my storefronts and you'll see it there as well. Next, we'll skip up to Amazing Spider-Man #129. And as many of you know, this is the first appearance of the Punisher and the full appearance of the Jackal. I am so tired of this book. It is everywhere. It is at cons. It is online. It is in auctions. It's everywhere. Again, the price is actually holding on this book. It's from 1974. The price is holding at about $1,500, seeing a little bit of weakness. I'd advise caution with this book. There are a lot of them. The sheer supply may actually drive the prices down. So be cautious with this. Buy at a margin of safety. The next one is in the Never Going to See It and Probably Can't Afford It books. That is Batman #1 from 1940, the first appearance of the Joker, the Cat, also known as Catwoman, and the Batplane. Just there's a fun fact for you. From 1940, this is about, I estimate, about a $650,000 book. That's a low side estimate because it probably hasn't gone up for auction for a while. This is the only pricing data I can find it. Buy it if you can. Always buy it on one of these if you can. We'll stick with Batman and then we'll skip up to #49. This sees the first appearance of the villain, the Mad Hatter, and the heroine, Vicky Vale, from 1948. This book is another book that doesn't come around a whole lot, although I've seen more of them than certainly Batman #1. This book sells around $4,200. Seen some weakness in recent prices and not very recent prices. But again, I think this falls into the category is buy it if you can. And then in that same category, buy it if you can find it and buy it if you can afford it, is Captain America Comics #1, the Multappear with the first appearance of Captain America and Bucky Barnes from 1941. This is probably a $300,000 book, another book that doesn't come around a whole lot. Hold, I've also seen a little bit of weakness in this book, but this falls into the category. It is in the category that buy it if you can. Next, we'll skip up to actually 1980 as I'm doing this list alphabetically. We'll look at DC Presents #26. This is the Multappear that sees the first appearance of Cyborg, Raven, and Starfire from 1980. A 7.0 copy sells right around $140. I've seen a lot of weakness across all grades of this book. So this one's selling about $140. There could be some value here. I'd say this is a cautious buy at this point. Now we'll go back to the days of yore, to Detective Comics #27. That is the first appearance of Batman. I wonder if some of you didn't know that Batman #1 was not the first appearance of Batman. But Detective Comics #27, first appearance of Batman and Commissioner Gordon from 1939. Another of these books that doesn't come around very often. If it sells at auction, it will make news and new highs. Conservative estimate for this book is probably $1.5 million. Buy it if you can find it. Buy it if you can afford it. Next, we'll move up to a more common book and actually one of my favorite covers, which is Detective Comics #66, the first appearance of Two-Face, Gilda Dent, and Salvatore Maroni from 1942. This is a $35,000 book at a 7.0. Falls into, buy it if you can afford it. You could find it raw or maybe at a much lower grade and at a more attainable price. Haven't seen any weakness. Also don't have a lot of data on this book. I would also say it is a buy it if you can get a hold of it and afford it. Now we'll jump way up in Detective Comics to #359. This sees the first appearance of Batgirl and Killer Moth. I want to stop here, and this is a 1450 book, so $1,450 book. The price is holding right now, but for some reason, I'm seeing this book absolutely everywhere. I'm going to advise extreme caution if you're going to acquire this book. The sheer supply, it's like someone found a treasure chest full of this book, and now this book is being pushed everywhere. The fact that it is everywhere at cons, on eBay, on Shortbox, be very careful. There could be some price weakness ahead just because of the sheer supply. Now we'll jump over to Marvel Comics and another very high-profile book and Multappear, which is Fantastic Four #1 from 1961, the full appearance of all of the Fantastic Four: Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, Human Torch, The Thing, Mole Man. This at a 7.0 is selling about $3,900. This is holding its value. This is one of those books I think you could buy with a minimal margin of safety or asking price, and you should see your investment mature upon picking it up. Perhaps see some volatility, but you should see it mature.
Correction, Fantastic Four #1 at a 7.0 is a $39,000 book. Thank you.
Now jumping up a few issues to Fantastic Four #45. This sees the first appearance of the Inhumans and a Black Bolt cameo as well. I had reservations about adding this because this book has been dropping across the board. This is from 1965. A 7.0 is currently selling at $475. It might be troughing with some other non-Fantastic Four #1 books. So keep an eye on it. I would advise caution though with this book. I'm not sure I'd recommend buying this book at this point. However, when you get up to Fantastic, and I'm going to cheat on this one, if you get up to Fantastic Four 48 and 49, this sees the first full appearance of the Silver Surfer and then the cameo of Galactus, and then 49 is the full appearance of Galactus. Very classic Marvel Fantastic Four story from 1966. The number 48 is usually the more valuable of the two. A 7.0 is selling somewhere around $3,000. And the 49 at 7.0 is selling somewhere around $1,800 to $1,900, depending on. This book also has been showing a fair amount of weakness. I think it's troughing. I've started to see some data telling me that this book may start to turn around. I actually do have a copy of number 49 at a 7.0, if I can pick it up. So if you have any interest in this book, I do have a 7.0. Please DM me or check my storefronts if you want to make a deal. Next is the subject of my first and most recent video, which is Giant Size X-Men #1, a very big multi-pair that has the first appearance of Colossus, Storm, Nightcrawler, Thunderbird, and Ileana Rasputin, who later becomes Magic. This is from 1975. If you watched my last video, and if you haven't, I suggest you do. If you watched my last video, you know that there's been some price strength in this book. However, I would say that there's still between 11 and 17% value in this book, and it's currently selling at a 7.0, somewhere around $2,800. I think there's more room for this book to increase. This and X-Men #1 are showing some strength, or at least holding their values. This is a buy for me, and I'm actually currently trying to acquire this book at the moment. Now we'll skip over to more Thor-oriented books, which is Journey into Mystery #85, the first full appearance of Loki and Heimdall and Odin from 1962. A 7.0 is selling at right around $8,500. It is holding its value. This book is definitely a buy with a minimal margin of safety or the asking price currently. Now we'll go to more modern books. It's going to skip around between kind of older, silvers and bronzes to more modern books. So one from my childhood, New Mutants #87. I looked at the price for the direct edition, not the newsstand edition. The first full appearance of Cable and Strife and Strife's Mutant Liberation Front, which is Wildside, Reaper, Forearm, Thumbelina, Strobe, Tempo Zero, a cast of characters that people tend to not remember. This is from 1991. This book keeps getting battered, unrecognizable. Cable and Strife are very important characters, especially for the Summers bloodline. This book is from 1990. I've seen it draw. A 7.0 has dropped all the way below $100 to right around $85 is where it's selling right now. I think you can buy this with a minimal margin of safety and definitely see some increase in the value in this book. I also own this book. I own the direct edition at 9.4. If you have any interest in this book, please do DM me or check my storefronts. Next, we'll jump up a few issues in New Mutants to number 98. Most of you know what this is. This is the first full appearance of Deadpool, Copycat, which later becomes Domino, and Gideon from 1991, a classic book from my childhood. Again, a 7.0 is currently selling at $260. This book has seen some recent strength because of the movie. And now we're also seeing weakness because all productions have stopped on movies because of the writer's strike and the actor's strike. I think this book you need to be cautious with, but I think it's a buy because eventually that is going to get resolved. We're going to see, and if you want to speculate on comic books, it's definitely a buy. I don't like comic book speculations. If you watch my last video, I took a moment out to tell you all about that. But having said that, I think you can buy this book right now on weakness at asking price or maybe a small margin of safety and see some near-term increases. Next, another one from my youth, Image Comics, Spawn #1 from Todd McFarlane, who seems to be everyone's favorite artist currently at the moment. This sees the first full appearance of Spawn, Salmon Twitch, Malebolgia, and Jason Wynn. This is from 1992. This is a case cost book. You can probably pick it up in a 9.8, probably around, I don't know, $130 to $150. I'm also seeing some price weakness in this book. This is also a book that I also see everywhere. Not a good sign. 7.0, of course, is going to be it's going to be well under $100. I would suggest caution with this book and buy it with a margin of safety. There's a lot of copies out there. There's a lot of 9.8s. There's a lot of 7.0s. There's a lot of grades out there. Definitely buy this book if you love it. I love it and own it as well. Now we'll go back in time from Spawn #1 to a very, very key Bronze Age book from 1977. That is Star Wars #1. looking at the first appearance or the multipair of all original trilogy characters in comic books: Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Chewbacca, C-3PO, Darth Vader, Ben Kenobi, Princess Leia, everybody that you know and love. This book actually came out in 1977 before the movie came out, so you could actually make the claim that this isn't just the first full appearances of all these original trilogy characters in comic books. It's actually across all media. You could make that claim at this point. Currently a 7.0. I've seen some weakness actually across the board in this book, which is a little strange to me. A 7.0 is currently selling somewhere around $240, so absolutely attainable. And then the higher grades are certainly attainable, but at higher prices as well. This book is a buy for me, also looking to acquire it myself. Now, one from the 80s. This is a bit of a runner-up for me in terms of this list, but I want to throw it out there anyway. A lot of characters in a franchise that I loved as a child, which is Thundercats. Thundercats #1. As far as I know, the first comic book appearance of all the Thundercats: Lion-O, Chitara, Panthro, Mumra, what have you. You know them all if you know what I'm talking about. Came out in 1985. I'm seeing a 7.0 sell for somewhere around $75. I've seen 9.8s run closer to $500. I currently actually have one in Newsstand 9.0. Again, DM me or check my storefronts if you have any interest in this book. This is a cautious buy for me. They're great books, and I think there may be some additional media, perhaps movies, coming from that franchise. Now we'll go back a few years to the early 80s or early to mid 80s, and I'm talking about a very, very important Bronze Age book, and a book that wasn't really well thought of when it came out. They didn't think it was going to do anything, and boy, did it do something moving forward. That is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1 from Eastman and Laird. That is a multi-appear that sees the first appearance of Donatello, Leonardo, Raphael, Michelangelo, Splinter, Shredder, all your favorite turtles, and their arch nemesis Shredder from 1984. A 7.0 is estimated to be selling somewhere around $12,500, considering this is a modern age book, and it's jumped that high. Obviously, you know, there was a cartoon, multiple movies, licensing, branding, action figures, what have you. This is holding its value. This is a buy for me at a minimal margin of safety or at asking price. Then we'll jump one issue forward to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #2. This book is a little bit more attainable at its price points. It is a multi-appear that sees the first appearance of Baxter Stockman, who is that fly guy, and of course April O'Neil, the news reporter from 1984. A 7.0 is selling somewhere around $400. Even the higher grades are much more attainable, closer to $1,000. Seen some weakness here. I think you can buy this at asking right now, and you certainly will realize that this book is probably the more attainable, or certainly the more attainable between the two Turtles books that I've talked about at this point, simply because of the price. And I think both those books are a buy for me, certainly with one. If you can find it and you can afford it, go for it. And the same with this one. You don't really need much of a margin of safety on these books. They're very rare. All right, we'll stay in the 80s and we'll talk about another key book from my youth, which is Transformers #1. I looked at the direct non-newsstand edition. All the original characters were introduced in comic books, including Optimus Prime, Megatron, Bumblebee, Wheeljack, Ironhide, Starscream, that entire cast of characters, also from 1984. This book at a 7.0 is currently selling right around $130. I'm seeing dropping across the board on all these #1s across the entire grading spectrum. This you can buy, I would say, with a minimal margin of safety. This I think this book is going to trough. Not based on movie speculation, because I think the last movie is about the end of the Michael Bay franchise, hopefully. And then we'll get a reboot of something else. But I think there's a lot of value in this book right now. It's a buy for me. Next, another classic from my youth, and forgive me, I'm doing some of this for myself. It is Voltron #1. As far as I know, the first appearances of all the original Voltron characters: Keith, Lance, Pidge, Princess Allura, Sven, also from 1984, a 7.0 selling somewhere around $75. Seeing price weakness, again, like Transformers #1. I think you can buy this right now for asking or with a little margin of safety. I have it in a 9.8 in direct. I also have it in a 9.6 in newsstand. They're on my storefronts if you have any interest. Now we'll skip up alphabetically to X-Men books. There's a lot of X-Men Multappears. They were really good about having first appearances in their books. So let's start with X-Men #1, which is a team book, obviously, from 1963, the first full appearance of the original team, which is Cyclops, Jean Grey, Iceman, Angel, Beast, Professor X, and their arch baddie Magneto. At a 7.0, this book sells somewhere around $26,000. It's holding its price across all its grades. If you find one that you can afford at almost just about whatever grade, you have my blessing and my recommendation to go buy that book. I'm in the market myself. Next, we'll skip up a few issues to X-Men #4, which sees the first full appearance of the Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, Mastermind, and Toad, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants from 1964. Now, all X-Men titles, aside from X-Men #1 and Giant Size X-Men #1, I'm seeing a broad price weakness across all their grades. All of them are buys for me. Maybe with a minimal margin of safety, I would absolutely recommend. I'm in the market for this X-Men #4 book. It sells currently at a 7.0, right around $3,500, which is really cheap historically. I think there's a lot of value in X-Men books. I would highly recommend you look at a lot of X-Men keys because they have to rebound at some point, whether it's done by a movie or simply because they just got too inexpensive. Next, we'll hop up to X-Men 121, another full team appearance book, but an important multi-appear. This is the first appearance of the team of Alpha Flight, which is Aurora, North Star, Sasquatch, Snowbird, Shaman, Vindicator. Actually had his first appearance in a previous X-Men title, so this isn't actually his first appearance, or Weapon Alpha, whichever you want to call him. This book is from 1979, a 7.0, sells right around $150. Careful, I'm going to tell you to exercise caution with this book. I'm seeing this book all over the place all of a sudden, probably because of some sort of speculation that I don't know about. And I don't think the oversupply is going to help this price whatsoever. Be careful with this book. It's maybe a weak buy or a very cautionary buy for me. Next, we'll skip up to X-Men #129. I looked at the direct non-newsstand edition. Very, very important book. Kind of the beginning of the Dark Phoenix saga with some very important characters, including Kitty Pryde, Emma Frost, the White Queen, Sebastian Shaw, and the first appearance of the Hellfire Club. Big deal. From 1980, a 7.0 is dropped all the way below $200 to $175. That is the direct edition. Like other X-Men books, a lot of value here. You have my recommendation to go ahead and consider and perhaps buy this book. I actually own it myself. It is up on my storefronts, #129. I have it in newsstand at a 9.4. If you want to make a direct deal or you can access it on my storefronts, you're welcome to. And rounding out the entire list is, sticking with X-Men, is X-Men #141. Also looked at the standard edition as opposed to the newsstand edition, the first issue of the Days of the Future Past saga, which obviously features Kitty Pryde heavily. She's basically the heroine of the main protagonist in that entire storyline, which is a very important storyline. As for first appearances, we saw the first appearance of Destiny, Avalanche, Pyro, and Rachel Summers from the alternate timeline. This is from 1981. This book has dropped all the way below $100 at a 7.0. It's a little shocking to me. This is a very key book in the X-Men universe and a very classic Marvel Comics book, certainly dropping across the board. You can buy it at any grade, I would say, with a minimal margin of safety. I also own it. I have the newsstand at a 9.6, which you can DM me if you have any interest, or you can find it on my pages as well. So, in lightning round fashion, that concludes the second episode of the 9.8 video series about Multappears. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. If I've missed something, please politely let me know in the comments. Also, let me know in the comments what you want to see. If there's more research you'd like me to do into these books or other books, or do comparisons between books, let me know. It's very important for me that I create content and videos for you that are relevant to you, my friends out in comic book land. So, for the 9.8 video series and myself, Mr. Pickles, go forth and love your Multappears.